the Israelis want us to think that we have a government, and they are making sure that the government is failing, and that is what they want. They want, on one hand, to blame their failures on a Palestinian government, and they want the Palestinian government to fail. So, at the end of the day, what happens in the future depends on how the Palestinians act at the present time. And we Palestinians, we can't sit tight and take this forever. Now, mind you, there has never been an empire that has lasted forever. There has never been an occupation that has lasted forever.
Israel launched a fully-fledged aggression against the Palestinian people, killing 6 children in a matter of 3 days and imposing tightened siege on the area of Jerusalem and today on the area of Nablus in the occupied West Bank. At the same time, the Israeli Prime Minister Lapid is addressing the world with a language of peace, using fake diplomacy. To talk more about that, I have with me Palestinian American writer and political analyst, the Vice President of the Palestinian American Council, Dr. Bishara Bahbah. Doctor, welcome to our program. And my first question, the Israeli Prime Minister speech at the United Nations Assembly weeks ago focused on the importance of peace and how he supports the two-state solution and this mantra, while on the ground he orders his soldiers to shoot to kill Palestinian youth and Palestinian children. And just yesterday, a 12-year-old Palestinian child was killed by Israeli soldiers in Jenin. A week ago, 7-year-old Palestinian child was killed in the area of Bethlehem. How this context can be understood?
I was one of the people that said that Lapid's statements at the UN General Assembly were positive because it's been almost 10 years since someone mentioned the two-state solution on the Israeli side. Now, that was good diplomacy for the world to see. But at the same time, while he was making that what many people called a courageous statement and putting back the two-state solution front and center in front of the political arena, Israeli troops have started a campaign, a vicious campaign of executing people in the West Bank, going into refugee camps, armed to the tilt, knowing very well that the reaction of Palestinians is going to be one of trying to defend themselves and depriving the Israeli military of arresting anyone, which in fact ends up resulting in casualties, mostly on the Palestinian side. Now, the last count I saw was that this year, over 100 Palestinians were killed by Israeli troops. That's the highest number since 2015. But the year is not over, and we're seeing daily killings of Palestinians. So, I am addressing this to the Israelis, do not talk to us about peace and a two-state solution, and at the same time whip the hell out of Palestinians in the Palestinian occupied territories. Those things cannot work. If Palestinians were able to launch the first intifada and the second intifada, there's nothing stopping them from launching the third intifada. And that would be thanks to the actions of the Israeli military on the ground and the hypocrisy of Israeli politicians on the international platforms, like the United Nations General Assembly.
Yeah, Dr. Bishara, we know that Israel is not interested in peace anymore with the Palestinians, but what about the international community, mainly the United States and Biden administration, which always talks about the two-state solution, but when it comes to implementing steps on the ground, we see nothing. Do you think because of the very dangerous situation that the whole region is going through, as Israel is threatens of invading the Palestinian cities again, like carrying out a major aggression like the one in the year 2000, do you think any political move is expected from the American side?
The Americans would like to drug us with money, meaning shut the hell up, and we will give you the funds that you need for hospitals, to feed yourselves, and so on. This is not what Palestinians need. Palestinians don't need charity from the United States. They need their rights, their legitimate rights, and the right to a state of their own. Now, is the Biden administration willing to do anything? I'm going to answer it by asking two questions. Did the Biden administration reopen the U.S. consulate in East Jerusalem? And did the Biden administration reopen the PLO office in Washington, D.C.? The answer is clear. They can say, they can talk the talk, but they cannot do anything. They are, in my view, helpless. And why? Because they don't want the confrontation with Israel. And quite frankly, the issue of the Israel-Palestine question is very low on the rung of priorities of the Biden administration. We're not important anymore. Nobody cares. The Arabs don't care. The United States does not care. Europe is getting tired, and what we have to rely on going forward is ourselves. And I wish that nobody gives the Palestinians money or what they call aid, so that the Palestinians can learn to depend on themselves, and they can grow their little gardens to eat from instead of buying Israeli vegetables and so on. We cannot, we have to accept a reality of the 21st century, and that is the world is tired of the question of Palestine, and we have to depend upon ourselves in order to make anything happen. Now, I invite the Israelis to reoccupy the entire West Bank. Let us go back to the system where the Israeli governor of the West Bank, and then they have to provide for our education, for our health, for our roads, and for everything comes with an occupation according to the Geneva Conventions. Now, what is stopping them from doing that is the presence of the Palestinian Authority. And I would like to suggest for the Palestinian Authority leaders to take themselves and go to Jordan and have the Israelis deal with the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I know, Dr. Bishara, the position of the current American administration or the successive administrations is always frustrating, because the only thing they give is lip service to the Palestinians. Now, if we talk about Europe and mainly the UK position, though they always say that we are a pro-Palestinian statehood, the British Prime Minister said that they are reviewing their position with regard to the movement of their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And some members of the British Parliament and some activists there had warned of the danger of such a step. First, what pushes the British Prime Minister to take this step, which is very weird? As we know, they always say Palestinian state in the land occupied in 1967 with Jerusalem as its capital, and what the implications of such a step would be.
Governments do not run themselves. Governments are run by people. The person who heads the government makes a difference. So in Britain, in the UK's position, the first thing I heard from the UK Prime Minister is that she is a very proud Zionist. President Biden said that he is a Zionist to the core. My God, it seems like the whole world are Zionists. And if you are a Zionist, you don't have to accept international norms, international laws, the Geneva Conventions, and other international treaties on how you treat occupied people. If Britain wants to move the embassy to Jerusalem, let them move it. Let Israel reoccupy the entire West Bank and Gaza, as well as East Jerusalem, and let them impose military rule. Now we are working under a shadow. We are working under a mirage. The Israelis want us to think that we have a government, and they are making sure that the government is failing. And that is what they want. They want, on one hand, to blame their failures on a Palestinian government, and they want the Palestinian government to fail. So, at the end of the day, what happens in the future depends on how the Palestinians act at the present time. And we Palestinians, we can't sit tight and take this forever. Now, mind you, there has never been an empire that has lasted forever. There has never been an occupation that has lasted forever. Yes, if I was the PFLP and so on, I would say time is on our side, let's wait. Well, it could be 100 years before Israel is weak enough to let go of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem. But in the meantime, they're building settlements all over the place. So Palestinian people have to act now.
Sure, Dr. Bishara, but the Israeli plan is clear. Israel is implementing the apartheid policy, like keeping the Palestinians in small pockets while the rest of the land is for Israeli settlers. This is a clear plan. But let me ask you about, the Palestinian situation is affected by the international policy and by the regional policy. Today, the Israeli government reached an agreement with Lebanon on the gas field in the Mediterranean. Do you think that this agreement is going to have any political implications on the medium and long run, or is going to stand here?
Israel wants to normalize relations with the United States. The United States has it as a priority to try and normalize ties between Israel and the Arab countries. Whether this is important in material terms, in money that will be extracted, in oil or gas that will be extracted, which in turn will turn into money, is almost irrelevant for the Israelis. All the Israelis want is an agreement with Lebanon to show other countries that it pays to have ties with Israel. So they are slowly creating a gap between the Palestinians and how they are treated and their goals for a state and normalization. Now they are saying normalization, we don't need the Arabs or we don't need the Palestinians or to find a solution to the Palestine question in order to normalize ties with the Arabs. And the agreement with Lebanon fits right in there. Now you have the Abraham Accords, and who knows what other countries in the future, Arab countries in the future, find it suitable for them to sign agreements with Israel. The Israelis can sign agreements with the entire Arab world. It's almost irrelevant because they have to live with almost an equivalent number of Palestinians living in historical Palestine as there are Jews. There are currently about 7 million Jews in Israel and the West Bank, and there is an approximate number or identical number of Palestinians living in the same area. If Israel wants a Jewish state, that will never ever happen as long as they control the Palestinians. But it is in Israel's interest to separate the two peoples and have them live in separate states. Yes, they can coordinate on certain issues, but it makes no sense. Now, of course, Lapid has the luxury of saying, I support the two-state solution. He is a prime minister of 4 months. I mean, if he was serious, he would have said, I would like to meet Abu Mazen tomorrow to start our talks about how we can move the peace process forward. He did not. He just said to the world that he supports the two-state solution, and then he added, so that he does not commit his party or anybody else or his government, he said, this is my personal view. It's his personal view, and obviously it makes no difference what his personal view is, because what makes a difference is what is happening on the ground.
Yeah, and Dr. Bishara, my last question for you. You wrote a very valuable article about the drones, and the Palestinians have in-depth experience with the drones as Israel uses them for assassinating Palestinian leaders of the Palestinian resistance on regular basis. So if you tell me about the importance of this article, why you wrote it, why you focused on drones, and to put that in the Palestinian context, please.
You know, drones are what is called an unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV. It flies without a pilot, but it's usually controlled by a pilot sitting thousands of miles away. Now, drones can be as simple as the balloon that was sent from Gaza into Israel with a piece of fire attached to it, and then it drops into the Israeli fields and burns them. Drones can be used for intelligence gathering and reconnaissance. Right now, for example, the Ukrainians are using drones to find out where the Russians are coming from, and using the Turkish-made drones to attack those columns coming into Ukraine. So it's used for intelligence gathering, reconnaissance. It's like you're flying binoculars in the sky, and it carries weapons. The fear is that the drone comes out of nowhere. It's a slow-moving, under the radar instrument that goes in and surprises whoever it attacks normally, because the radars can't get them. Now, drones, for example, the Houthis in Yemen have used drones against Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. But between 2015 and 2019, September of 2019, the Houthis were able to penetrate Saudi airspace with over 450 drones and maybe 700 missiles. So the drones is the weapon, are the weapon of the poor. Iran developed the drones because it lacked an air force that could have an impact in the region, and has used these drones in a very effective way in attacking their so-called enemies. So, I mean, Israel, yes, can see what's going on in Gaza, but there are reports that Palestinian drones have entered Israel from the Gaza Strip and returned. They have even the Israelis found the Hezbollah drone over the Dimona nuclear facility. So drones make things a lot more dangerous, but it allows non-state actors like Hamas and Hezbollah, and state actors like Iran and Ukraine and Russia to use it as a vicious military weapon that is terribly inexpensive compared to using a manned fighter jet. Now, the F-35 costs about $135 million. You can have a drone for a few $100, or you can have a drone for tens of thousands of dollars. That is nothing compared to the $135 million that a fighter jet costs. So the drone is going to change the military strategies in the 21st century. And that is actually the title of a book that I'm currently working on.
Dr. Bishara Bahbah, Palestinian American, Vice President of the Palestinian American Council. It has been a great pleasure having you on our program. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal. Have a nice time.